Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie. This is Tina, Abby, and Madison. And as just mentioned, we study the effect of different film and music type on stress, specifically physiological and self-reported stress, which will be explained further. But first, I'm going to discuss the previous research that led to the development of our project. In 2017, Lenar, Sivek, Schubert, and Bulmer-Kona studied the effect of different music types on stress. Specifically, they analyzed classical, jazz, white noise, and self-selected music on stress. And they asked participants to sit and listen to the music. They found that participants rated being the most relaxed when listening to classical music compared to all the other music types. In 2007, Krievig, Wilhelm, Roth, and Gross studied the effect of different film types on physiological stress. Specifically, they analyzed fear-inducing films. Participants' skin conductance level and blood pressure were significantly higher in the fear-inducing films compared to the control film. Finally, the main study that we based our research on was a 1983 study by Thayer and Levinson, in which they studied the effect of different music types on a singular film. Specifically, they analyzed horror music, no music, and documentary music when paired with an industrial safety film. They found that participants' skin conductance level were significantly higher in the horror music condition compared to no music, and no music compared to documentary music. Based on this research, we came up with 5 hypotheses. Horror music paired with a horror film will have the highest physiological and self-reported stress. Second, classical music paired with a documentary will have the lowest physiological and self-reported stress. Horror music paired with a documentary will have a higher physiological and self-reported stress compared to classical music paired with a horror film. Fourth, horror music will have a higher physiological and self-reported stress compared to classical music, regardless of the film type. And finally, horror film will have a higher physiological and self-reported stress compared to the documentary, regardless of music type.
To test our hypotheses, participants were individually brought into a private testing room. We had 68 total participants. After completing their demographic survey, a blood pressure cuff was placed on the non-dominant upper arm in order to allow them to become acclimated to the feeling of the cuff. They were then given a word search puzzle as a cognitive distraction, what they were asked to do for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, the researcher came back into the room and measured the participants' blood pressure, heart rate, and self-reported stress with a visual analog scale. This is the self-reported stress measure that we used. Participants were asked to point to the scale to indicate how stressed they were in that moment. In 1983, Carlson supported the validity of the use of this visual analog scale to measure self-reported stress. Afterwards, the participant was then exposed to one of 4 of our experimental conditions, of which they had already been randomly assigned to. The condition lasted for a total of 3 minutes. The participants' post-measure scores were then taken, so their blood pressure, heart rate, and self-reported stress. For a horror music variable, we chose a selection from the movie The Conjuring 2, which created both moments of suspense and fear. For our classical music variable, we chose Concerto in C for Part and Orchestra, created by Mozart. In previous research, Lenar et al. Found that this music significantly reduced the stress level of participants. The horror clip was taken from the film Amusement. The scene we showed depicted a man dressed as a clown terrorizing a young woman in the bedroom. We chose this film because it was not well known to the public. For our documentary variable, we chose a clip from the documentary Desert Seas, which depicts fish swimming calmly back and forth through plant life, and that led us to our data analysis.
So as Tina and Natalie stated earlier, we had 3 independent variables. The first was music type, and as you can see, we had 2 levels of that, which was separated into both horror music and classical music. Our second dependent variable of film was separated as well into 2 levels of both horror and documentary. Our third variable, which was our only within subjects variable, was time, and that was recorded both pre and post stimulus. Because of our variables, we had to run a 2x2x2 mixed ANOVA, and we ran it on all 3 dependent variables of heart rate, blood pressure, and self-reported stress. For heart rate, we found no significant effects. However, for blood pressure, we found 1 significant main effect, and that was the effect of time on blood pressure. So as you can see in our graph here, Regardless of film or music type that the participant was exposed to, they were, the blood pressure decreased overall. And that was the only significant effect that we found for blood pressure. We also ran it on our third dependent variable, which was self-reported stress. As you can see here, this was only one of our two main effects that was significant. We also found significant two-way interactions and significant simple effects, but we'll get to that. The first main effect was the effect of film on self-reported stress, and as you can tell, participants who were exposed to the horror film, as opposed to the documentary film, reported overall increased levels of stress. Our second main effect is the main effect of time on self-reported stress, which means that overall, regardless of music or film type, participants reported increased levels of stress after they viewed our stimulus versus before. Our first significant two-way interaction is the interaction of film and time on self-reported stress scores. So as you can see, the blue bars represent the horror film and the pink bars represent the documentary film. Over time, participants reported increased levels of stress when they were exposed to the horror film and decreased levels of stress when they viewed the documentary film. The significant simple effect that we found for this was only on the horror film, and that was the only significant difference between self-reported stress measures pre and post. Our second two-way interaction was the interaction between music and time on self-reported stress, and for this we had similar results where we found that when they were exposed to the horror music, participants reported increased levels of stress, whereas when they were exposed to the classical music, they reported decreased levels of stress overall. We also had one significant simple effect for this interaction as well, and that was also only with the horror music.
So what does this mean? Unlike previous research, we found that blood pressure actually decreased over time. We suspected that this is due to the fact that college students are always stressed, and so having a break from their schoolwork actually could have decreased their physiological stress. Like previous research, we found that horror film and horror music both increased levels of self-reported stress. However, the results were not significant when the two were paired. We believe this is due to the fact that our horror music and horror film were not synchronized. In Thayer and Levinson's study, they utilized a 12-minute video, and Kierbig utilized a 10-minute video. In our study, we did a 3-minute video. We believe that although we did get significant changes in self-reported stress, the clip may not have been long enough to get changes in physiological measurements. Also in Thayer and Levinson's research, they used an industrial safety film, which was more of a fear and disgust inducing than anxiety provoking. Our film choice could have caused a similar reaction because clouds usually have an adverse reaction. We would have preferred to measure physiological responses continuously to account for any spikes in heart rate throughout the video, but the equipment that was provided to us, we were not able to do so. So the title of our study on SONA was What Scares You, What You See, or What You Hear. This may have led participants to know what we were studying based on it saying or what scares you. So they might have been predetermined to see that we have a jump scare. So that might mentally prepare them for any initial fright. Finally, along with obvious participant limitations such as sample size and sex, we noted that participants probably knew what we were testing since we did not use deception in our study. Because of this, participants could have been trying to please us on the self-reported stress, saying that they were more stressed after viewing the video. Future research should look further into film lengths to see if there are any significant differences in physiological responses between a longer film and a shorter film, and perhaps look into excluding self-reported stress as it is biased. So thank you for listening to our presentation.
So usually a physiological measure is more sensitive than a self-report, right? And it's something where I didn't know I was stressed, but the heart rate is showing, and you guys sort of found the opposite. So do you think that says anything about the ability of heart rate and blood pressure to actually tell you about stress in that way, or do you really think it was these other limitations that you mentioned?
I personally really really think that it was just our manipulations. The video was really short compared to other studies, but for us, we were trying to get as many people into our study as we could since we did have 4 conditions. So I really think that just the film length and the equipment that we had was kind of unique sometimes as well.
So typically in horror films, not that I've seen many, but there is this building of the music with then the reveal. And I know you said that you didn't sync them up. I mean, was it disjointed? I mean, did you have the sort of, at a time when he was just like, I'm a clown,
So at times with the music, there would be the kind of the spikes you would hear in music, maybe 5 seconds before, like the clown turned its head or the clown just suddenly disappeared. And so that's why we believe that the reason we didn't have a 3-way interaction that was significant is because the music works best when it's paired with the visual, and so we believe that that was the reason why we didn't do that.
So
It's like I said.
do you think if you had like a classical song that wasn't that sort of stereotypic horror movie, but it still has those same sort of spikes?
It did.
But if it's, do you think and this is outside of what you looked at, but if that was sort of synced up with things happening, I mean, do you think it's the timing of the music or like the tonal quality of the music that really matters?
That's what further research has to get into. We have seen other studies, like when I mentioned the self-selected music in that previous research, they asked the participants why they chose that self-selected, whether it was like tone or the melody, all those different factors. They didn't find any significance with that, so that's why I didn't mention it. But yes, future studies can definitely do what we did, but this time have the music synchronized exactly, and then how we did it previously to see if that is truly the case. You have a question for why?
This might be kind of like out there, but did you guys have any like knowledge of their medical like history? Like, because there are certain people that could be predisposed to having a high blood pressure, or athletes have a lower heart rate, things like that. Like that could have probably played a role in this. I don't know if you probably didn't. If anything.
So we actually looked at the difference between people's heart rates. So they had their own participant code, and we took a pre-test and post-test. So regardless of whether or not their pre-test was much lower than their post-test, like we were just looking at difference. So it didn't matter if it was high or low. We just compared the two.